think it is not healthy to enter into a marriage relationship thinking that divorce is an option. I feel that it's very important to have the premarital counseling.
I'm Steve Aubrey. When engaged couples plan their wedding ceremony, there are usually a lot of details to take care of. But a beautiful wedding can't guarantee a successful marriage. How do today's couples know if they're ready for a lifelong commitment of love and fidelity? Stay tuned as we look at some issues to consider before you say "I do."
These newlyweds get to see a lot of each other in their work with Habitat for Humanity in Los Angeles.
Our first conversation was about faith, and I think that was a good foundation for the rest of the relationship.
Eternal God.
Before they married, Sarah and Daniel participated in a program called Engaged Encounter offered through the United Methodist Church. Using married couples as facilitators, the Engaged Encounter program gets couples talking about the issues they need to address to have a successful marriage.
We went to Engaged Encounter because it was a gift from my mom, and we kind of didn't want to go, but she sort of paid for it and made us go. And it was excellent. And any of my friends who get married, that'll be our wedding present to them, because I think it's very worthwhile. Fortunately, it didn't raise a whole lot of issues. A lot of the topics we'd already discussed. And I think that's the main point, is that if you haven't discussed the topics, such as children, you probably shouldn't be getting married. So for us, it just reaffirmed that this was the right decision. The Engaged Encounter was great, but the counseling session we had with the minister who performed the wedding was very valuable as well, just the one-on-one. And she was able to really work with us for 2 solid days. And we really brought up a lot of things, and I remember crying in that session, and it was very helpful.
I feel that it's very important to have the premarital counseling, that is not an option.
The Reverend Kathy Bowman is pastor of First Lutheran Church in Vista, California. She believes it's critical that premarital counseling be provided to couples who want to be married in a church.
In this day and age where we are blessed with so many challenges in life, that we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our communities of faith, we owe it to our families, we owe it to the children we may bring up, that we have the strongest possible beginning of this marriage. So a lot of work needs to be done before you ever get into the marriage relationship to say, you know, what are our communication patterns here? What are we really good at? What are we really, do we talk to each other well about our feelings, about our frustrations? Can we be honest about finances? Can we be honest about division of labor in this household? Honest about careers and where we want to go with that? Honest about, do we want to enter into creating a family here in terms of with children? All of those things need to be talked about and be in conversation before you ever enter into the marriage relationship.
I think having a realistic expectation when you go into it helps. You know, I know that I have faults, and I know that Daniel has faults, and we're going to change, and that we're not going to be the same people we are now 20 years from now, but that we can grow together. And so I'm just confident that we share the same basic values, even if our backgrounds are different or some of our traits are different.
I like to stress the partnership, that you are coming into this as 2 equal partners. You are both bringing your wonderful gifts of how God has created you into this new relationship with each other. I like the symbol of the marriage candle that some congregations use. We use that, the unity candle, sometimes it's called. I like to always have those 2 candles on the side remain lit. And yes, they light the marriage candle in the middle after they've made their vows to each other. But those 2 candles stay lit because they don't lose their independence. They don't lose who they are just because they come together in this union. They stay as individual, unique peoples who are now committing to each other, but they still remain who they are as well and are creating a new kind of union.
Some studies show that more than 50% of couples getting married today have been living together. Reverend Bowman believes these couples need specially tailored premarital counseling.
Living together is a choice that folks make, and certainly it is a reality of our time. I would not say, from our perspective, that that is the healthiest thing, but it is a reality that we live with. One of the questions I ask when folks have been living together for even a short time or a long time, why are you choosing to get married? What for you is the difference between living together and entering into a marriage commitment with one another?
I think the most surprising thing was we had lived together before, and my impression was nothing's really going to change after this wedding, which is a day. But it did, you feel different, and it's hard to explain why. Maybe it's because you're making a commitment in front of your family and your community, but you know, for me, it just felt like, yeah, this is really for real, and you have to make it work that much more, and it's also a very special commitment.
My parents were divorced, and most of the kids I grew up with, their parents were divorced. And I think so our generation has been very careful about this commitment. And you know, living together is okay, but there's still something about taking, you know, there's a further commitment and standing before a community and saying, okay, we are going to be doing this together for always, you know, that people are very wary of. And my hope is that, you know, by our commitment to one another is going to give people courage that you can do this.
It was hard for us to find a married couple that we could model our own marriage after, who was our age. And luckily there was a couple we knew in Brazil who Daniel became really close to. And when they found out we were getting married, they gave us each these Franciscan crosses. And I think the knots on the cross represent things, and it really is a symbol of the things that are important in our marriage. And it's humility is the main one, and faith, courage, and wisdom are the other three knots. And so we try to keep those principles alive in the marriage.
If you only surround yourselves with stories of things that did not work, you will not be willing to make the risk and leap and say, I think it's worth it. You need to hear both sides, and you need to hear from those people that say, this is the best thing that I ever could have done for me and for this relationship, because of the joy it's brought me, the support and the strength in living this life. I would not choose to do it any other way.
Everyone knows people whose families have been ripped apart by divorce. Concern over the high rate of failed marriages is causing churches across the country to try to improve the odds for successful marriage. Primarily, this involves marriage preparation for engaged couples, done far in advance of the wedding day.
Commitment is not taken very seriously, or as seriously as we would like to have it be taken in our culture and in our times.
As director of the Marriage and Family Life Office for the Diocese of San Diego, Father Bill Ortman coordinates marriage preparation for hundreds of engaged couples each year.
Their big concern is the wedding day, and we have this statement that we use reminding them that a wedding is a day and a marriage is a lifetime. And I like to challenge them to put an equal proportional amount of work on the lifetime that they put on the day, or even more. The spirituality of marriage that we offer them, we like to help them think of how God has been the author of marriage and how God has considered marriage as a very holy life. As he spoke in the Old Testament about his relationship with his people, he uses spousal terms or familial terms. Our pre-Cana consists of a day-long activity, and we have speakers come in, and it's informational. We have a psychologist couple come and speak about family of origin and communication.
You're going to discover early in your relationship family of origin differences that cause some tension and some discomfort in your relationship. And you're going to resolve them. You're going to work through them, and they won't be an issue. You're going to discover other ones that may be an issue for as long as you're together.
And then I do something on the spirituality of marriage and the sacrament of marriage, and then I have one of our couples talk about living the sacrament of matrimony. And then we ask our couples to do a premarital inventory. It's called FOCUS, Facilitate Open Couple Communication, Understanding, and Study. And as we score that and return it to them, they have a large amount of areas that they can communicate about. It's broken into categories of communication, family of origin, philosophy of life, religion, finances, commitment, and those sorts of things. After the lunch, we have a presentation on spirituality and sexuality, where a couple will talk about the sexuality that's part of the marital life is really God's plan for spirituality in their life. And then we do a segment on natural family planning, and then I speak something about the wedding day, helping them plan their ceremony in church, and also some thoughts about the reception and how to make the day a little more sacred. And then we have a presentation on dysfunctionality in families, and there's always a professional who does that. And speaks to them about, that any dysfunctionality that's been experienced in their life or in their own lives, it doesn't necessarily have to be repeated in their marriage. And then we have a presentation on finances and budgeting, which is very well received.
Are you sure that your fiancé doesn't feel like my money is my money and your money is my money? You want to make sure that you have that clear early on.
We offer these preparations because we know that the marital relationship can be a great source of joy and happiness in their life, or it can be a great source of pain. And hopefully what we do will urge them to look beyond how the world might tell them to be married. I think the world often looks upon them as a consumer, or the joining of two incomes. And we think that we can offer them the spirituality of knowing that they're really part of a bigger plan, that they can see that bigger than themselves.
We met at a summer camp up in the Santa Cruz Mountains 3.5 years ago. We were working there together as camp directors.
What attracted me to Corey was that he was very patient and caring, and we worked with developmentally disabled kids, so that was needed in that type of situation. So I think he was friendly and kind of funny, and he has a sense of humor and stuff. We went to a wedding a couple years ago, and we were thinking about it then, talking about it at the reception and stuff.
Interfaith couples make up a very large percentage of those getting married today. Jennifer Canton is Roman Catholic, and her fiancé, Corey Straley, is Lutheran. They will be married in the Catholic Church in a few months. For them, marriage preparation has been valuable for improving communication about many issues.
What was a really hard topic that we'd never talked about before was divorce, and if it could happen to us. It was a very emotional time because I had never thought that once I got married that I would ever get divorced. And Corey comes from a separated family. His parents are divorced just recently. And so that might have made him think that this could happen.
I think I'm just being more realistic and not so much, I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just trying to, because they kind of phrase it in a question, like, is there ever the possibility that you could get divorced? And I mean, for me, I just, seeing it happen to my parents and friends and stuff real recently, I just, I had to answer it kind of yes, because it does seem realistic to some aspect.
It was surprising that he did think about that, and so that was a hard topic that we did talk about, and we probably will continue to talk about.
But marriages today, if most people probably would be honest, they would say, well, if it doesn't work, I can always divorce, and nobody will think twice about that, and I'll move on to the next relationship. That is not a real healthy way to enter into a marriage. That you enter into a covenant saying, I will be faithful, and I intend to be faithful to you until the day I die. And I will risk giving my life to you in the name of God, and let's see where the journey takes us. I think the key challenge in a marriage that is coming from two different religious traditions is that, and if you choose to carry on two traditions within the household, is that you do not have a joint community of faith. You do not have one place where you are connected and your family grows up in.
To get married to someone of a different faith was a really difficult thing. I mean, it wasn't difficult like I would never be able to do it, but it was difficult thinking that I would have a split family.
I would tend to challenge folks to choose one community of faith to be involved in, or to choose a middle ground. maybe you've come from two different traditions, but there is kind of a middle road that would be brand new for both of you, that maybe is a church that you could both theologically be okay with and could be a place where your family could worship.
Now Corey's thinking about becoming Catholic, so I'm pretty happy about that. So it's just, you know, it's up to him whenever he wants to do it.
We talk about the future a lot more now, since, you know, so it's kind of like we talk about wedding plans, and then we also have, you know, we're making married plans.
Many people today are marrying after unsuccessful previous marriages, but studies show that second and third marriages are at especially high risk for divorce. In response, churches are developing ways to prepare these couples for remarriage.
First marriages tend to fail, perhaps because of neglect or financial reasons, and whereas second marriages universally seem to fail because of children problems, stepchildren.
John and Joan Swim were previously married and had children from their first marriages. When they married each other, difficulties of coping with a blended family challenged their relationship. John and Joan now teach divorced and widowed persons how to prepare for a new marriage through the Diocese of San Diego.
Stepchildren are a very big issue, and we keep telling the couples, you have to put your relationship number one, and then things will work out okay. But keep that your primary focus. When
People remarry and there's children involved, the children usually are the victims to a large degree. The one hope that children cherish in divorce is that their parents will get back together. And you're kind of removing that from them, and it can cause bitter feelings. They're very insecure. They don't, you know, they're not in control of the situation. They're just being taken along and plopped into this situation. And it's very hard for them. And this is perhaps why they cause the problem, because they're going to do is try and ally themselves with their parent against the new step-parent. And if that happens, we call that a coalition. And if that's allowed to happen, where generational lines cross and the child and the parent are against the new parent, it doesn't take very long for the new parent to say, well, I guess I'm not really wanted here. One of the other things that's important is that you are able to deal with the past or forgive perhaps your ex-spouse.
And those exes are going to be involved in your life forever if you have children, at weddings and births of grandchildren. They'll always be there. So you need to, as hard as it is, forgive.
Probably as we look back on our previous marriages, one of the things that we had in common is we did not have any faith perhaps in that marriage. Joan was a Christmas and Easter Methodist, and I was an agnostic. When the tough times came, we like to say in those marriages that we didn't have anything to fall back on, or anything to grab onto. We feel that's much different in this marriage. Usually we say to people, well, how did we get here then, I guess? And our then next door neighbors invited us on a marriage encounter weekend. And when we left that weekend, we talked about it, and I said to Joan, I said, I think we have a good marriage. I see only one thing is missing. And she said, what's that? And I said, God. When we joined the church and we renewed our vows, I think that time we felt truly like newlyweds, because we were able to this time plan and have a wedding with a reception and maid of honor and best man, and we had a large group of friends that were there to welcome us, and it was truly a sacrament.
The Gospel of John says that the wedding at Cana was where Jesus performed his first miracle, turning water into wine. Before you say I do, ask Jesus to attend your wedding and put your marriage in his hands. You'll see what a miracle